Graduates Conversations podcast.
Okay, this next question comes from New South Wales, from a certified translator, Chinese language. As now, many organizations accept digital copies of certified translation documents, I find that some migration agencies are illegally using NAATI's translator stamps. Once an agency has received some documents translated by a translator, they would know what the stamp looks like and can keep a copy of it. With lots of document editing software available, it's very easy for an agency to steal a NAATI translator stamp and paste it on whatever documents they want, and then send the fake stamp documents to relevant parties. During the whole process, the translator and the document receiver do not know the truth. I have seen many migration agents advertising on their website saying free NAATI stamp to put on your documents if required. How does NAATI prevent these kind of things from happening? How can the translation document receivers know if the stamps on the documents are real or not? How can translators themselves know if their stamps have been misused or not? I mean, this is a pretty serious allegation. We're talking about fraud here, which I think is a federal offence, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's happening here? What could happen?
The first part I'd probably comment is it's not that dissimilar to the work health safety question that we had before. I appreciate different domains, but NAATI has limitations in what we can and can't do. And in this scenario, exactly as you've said, this is identity fraud, and the appropriate mechanism to report it is via the police. Mm-hmm. So where NAATI's involvement comes in is we would support any action, obviously by a practitioner that's found that their stamp is being misused, and a verification tool on our website in that scenario wouldn't work because it would just verify that the person was done. So a couple of parts in the question. First one is we're absolutely concerned about this issue, but we don't have a direct ability to influence it. Ability to help is limited to, if a practitioner finds that they've been the subject of identity theft in that scenario, is to go to the police, lodge a report, and any assistance we can give with that police investigation, we will absolutely help with. For examples like the migration agents that are offering free NAATI stamps, those can be informed to NAATI, and we can try and chase them up. But I would comment again that it's an illegal practice, and that could be reported direct to police as well. So, I don't really, very conscious of the fact that it feels like with the work health safety one and this one that we just go, oh, sorry, we can't help. It's just we have limitations. We don't have legislative powers over investigating and charging a migration agent in that scenario.
It's jurisdiction, isn't it? I mean, you don't have the powers to do anything about this. The police does, so exactly. They need to know about this.
Yeah, so we would absolutely encourage those practitioners, if they hear something that sounds wrong or they see another practitioner's stamp that they think might have been used, contact that practitioner via the contact details through the website and say, hey, I noticed your stamp on 700 migration agent forms. Was it you? Because if it's not, I think we might have a problem, and use a bit of that professional solidarity to help each other out and combat what is an illegal act by unscrupulous business in that case.
So if any practitioner thinks something like this is happening or knows something like this is happening, they need to let the authorities know as soon as possible, and NAATI will support them in any way they can if required.
Absolutely. And if they don't know who the authority is, feel free to contact us as well, and we can assist there as well.
All right, very good. Thank you very much. Again, I don't think this next question is something that you actually have influence over, but I'll ask it. New South Wales, Filipino Certified Provisional Interpreter. Why is there no standard hourly rate for interpreters? Every agency pays different, and when is travel allowance payable? How is the distance calculated? Is the reference point from the city or distance from the interpreter's home?
Yeah, I'll take that one. And yes, just like for the previous questions, NAATI can't directly act on it, but we certainly acknowledge that the pay rates for interpreters and translators should be higher and could be higher. And NAATI is working a lot with AUSIT, ASLIA, Professional Australia to advocate for that and to explain how that translators and interpreters are professionals. It's a skilled profession, and so we are bringing our support there to help them in advocating and getting those better rates for practitioners. But this is not something we can influence directly, I'd say, but we are certainly supporting.
Thank you very much. Okay, next one's a bit long as well, so bear with me. This practitioner is from Victoria, Vietnamese language, and is a certified interpreter. An interpreting agency is allegedly letting all of their contractor interpreters of all levels of certification access and accept the available interpreting jobs at the same time, causing an unfair allocation of jobs. Despite they always deny that and claim that interpreters with the highest level of certification get priority. The fact is, all certified interpreters working for this agency are currently getting much fewer jobs than their provisional certified colleagues. This could be seen simply as their way of business running, but it undermines what NAATI is always promoting, which is every interpreter should aim to further their skills and obtain the next level of certification. This agency is prioritizing provisional certified interpreters over certified interpreters, thus disencouraging provisional certified interpreters from improving themselves. What is NAATI's view on this?
Probably unsurprisingly, our view is dim on it. Clearly, we believe that the most experienced interpreters, depending on job, there might be some resourcing considerations by the business in question, but it doesn't sound like that from the question. The most highly skilled person should be getting the work because they have just demonstrated a commitment. Saying that, like the other questions, we don't have direct jurisdiction or ability to influence the hiring and recruitment and scheduling practices of individual businesses. I would comment that for this particular agency that's being referenced, potentially Professionals Australia in being the union that covers translators and interpreters may be an effective means.
I was going to say, who can they go to about this?
Yeah, I would comment that as and this is why unions exist, isn't it? Because as an individual arguing up the chain, it would be A, intimidating, and B, potentially unlikely to achieve much apart from getting management of that company offside. But I really do think in that scenario, as long as allegations can be proven. Yeah, I wouldn't want to go into and I don't want to give legal advice here, but I wouldn't want to go into a conversation like that without hard evidence that these practices were taking place.
The person is saying allegedly letting.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I would comment that it's either Professionals Australia as a union for translators and interpreters being able to advocate on behalf towards that organisation, or potentially it's a group of more senior staff there that take their concerns to management about the allegations and seek an explanation. So we are certainly concerned of reports like that. We can influence, again, behind the scenes, and we like to think that some of the agreements that have been made in previous years, particularly with, say, the way that the Judicial Council on Cultural Diversity have come up with guidelines on how to engage interpreters, how to select levels, and the process that they go through, or the Victorian government's codified pay rates into their procurement guidelines. where NAATI has worked to help achieve those goals, we like to think that they become employers of choice, which then drag less desirable employers to a higher standard because they know this is now the accepted pay rate and conditions that professionals operate under. So, yeah, I appreciate it's not a really direct answer to that question because we can't, but definitely in that very specific scenario, Professionals Australia or senior group of practitioners working within that agency, I think might be able to affect some change.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your honest answer on that one. Okay, so almost there. Our last question comes from New South Wales, who is an Arabic and French certified interpreter. Okay. In the current environment, most agencies have shifted to telephone interpreting services, thus fewer hours face-to-face. So how could interpreters fulfill the criteria of 200 hours if jobs are scarce? Should NAATI reduce the criteria considering work practices have changed?
Yeah, I can probably answer that again. Going back to a couple of previous questions as well, we have reduced the recertification requirements as part of our COVID response. So the number of 200 hours isn't correct. It was 120 prior to COVID.
Yep.
And it's been reduced by a third for anyone with 2020 in their recertification period. It's 80 hours or 20,000 words in translators. On the overall comment that work practices have changed, I still believe that professional development and work practice requirements are appropriate when broken down, even at the full level. Let's use 120 assignments or hours for an interpreter over the 3-year period. It's still less than 1 hour a week.
And I think it's important to point out that it's 120 assignments as well. So, every telephone interpreting job is actual an assignment too. Because I think before it was, almost like every 4 interpreting jobs became one assignment because of they were booked in 15 minutes blocks. But it's important to, I think, point out, we've said it a couple of times already, there's 120 or for everyone who's got 2020 in their recertification period, it's 80 hours or 80 assignments, correct?
Correct.
Whichever one applies to you, I guess. What about if you've got a full day court job? Is that one assignment or is that 8 hours?
You would count that as hours.
Yeah, so 8 hours because it's a full day. But if it's a 15-minute phone job, it's one assignment.
One assignment. Okay,
well, it's great. So it actually probably is much easier than before.
Yeah, I would probably compare to previous. And again, when looked at, even in the hour thing, it's less than an hour a week to maintain currency of skill for a profession. And this sort of goes back to some of the previous questions, which is the certification system and recertification has been designed so we can hand on heart go to government agencies and businesses and go, translators and interpreters that are certified by us meet stringent requirements for work practice and professional development, no different than any other professional in the country. So you can't keep, there is lots of horror stories out there of people just going, it's not really a profession, it's not as highly skilled as some of the others, so we can underpay it.
We'll just use a family member, it's okay.
It's all fine, yeah. So, part of the recertification, although it can sometimes seem onerous, is to really put out there that this is a profession with really strong guidelines and ethics and needs to be treated as such. And then further to that, I would comment that we appreciate that in some languages, 80 hours in this current cycle or 120 regular may not be possible. And through other factors such as maternity leave or illness, those hours might not be achievable either. And NAATI is flexible on that, we're understanding. So solely because we mentioned it before as the largest spoken language in Australia, Mandarin is likely to get lots of work, with 660,000 people in the last census that said they spoke it as a primary language at home, where the last recognised practicing credential that we gave out for Haitian Creole is likely to have less opportunities to get work practice, and we would look at them on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, so even though it is one standard set of rules, you can take it as case by case as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
In this case, this interpreter has Arabic and French certifications. There should be plenty of work for this person, would you say?
Yeah, on the surface of it, Arabic and French, we would expect a reasonable number of work hours to be available. However, their personal circumstance might be that they live in a regional location like Broome. Domestic travel has pretty much dried up, and the interpreting assignments are face-to-face in Perth. In that scenario, we would say we understand that there is extenuating circumstances that mean that the regular requirements shouldn't apply in that case. That's
what I wanted to bring it down to. Although in some languages the work is not there, and in some languages the work is there, but for whatever reason, for some circumstances, or it could be personal reasons as well, like we're saying, maternity leave, or you might be living in a rural area and you might not have access to so much work, you will address that on a case-by-case approach.
Yeah, absolutely. I just the other day we gave discretion for someone NAATI certified in Australia, clearly certified in Australia, but was living here, went overseas, and then the pandemic shut the borders, hasn't been able to return. So their last year has been unable to get work in Australia because they've not been here at all. So in that scenario, it's clear that they could have worked if they had the opportunity to, but due to the circumstances, so that recertification was 3 years. In the case of something like maternity leave, we can add a year on, for example, to compensate for that time out of the workforce.
Very good. So just email NAATI, and they will be addressed on a case-by-case approach.
Yep,
all
absolutely.
Right. Thank you so much, Aurelie and Michael, for joining me today and answering so many questions that have been asked over the last few months now, since our last episode. Okay. Next time we will be doing this in about 3 months' time again. We said we'll do this quarterly now, so that we get enough questions to put you under the pump. So thank you very much indeed for joining us today and answering these questions. I really appreciate it. Even the ones that had not much to do with NAATI, you did your best to answer those and give some guidance as well. Thank you so much, Michael and Aurelie.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, pleasure. Thank you.
All Graduates Conversations Podcast.